In the following video, I'd like to share with you what I would consider are the challenges and the limitations of causing an accidental tear in the anterior capsule and the strategies of how to overcome this challenge. Now here are the important considerations. 1. Tears caused in the anterior capsule due to accidental injury by the keratome is more likely to occur in the periphery or the mid-periphery of the anterior capsule. Now these can pose certain challenges. 1. We are typically used to starting our capsulorrhexis in the center and then moving it outward and controlling the tear. The second point is the fact that we are all typically used to starting our capsulorrhexis at a particular clock hour. Now the capsular tear caused as a result of faulty instrumentation such as an accidental injury with the keratome can occur at any clock hour related to where's your side port entry. And this may make it ergonomically rather challenging for the surgeon who may now need to use either hand to be able to start, negotiate and control the tear to achieve a stable capsulorrhexis. And here are the final two considerations. The tear in the anterior capsule is likely to be a flat tear. It's clearly not a flap that has already been raised, therefore holding and lifting it up may be a certain challenge. And lastly, if the nick were too deep, it is quite possible to have ruffled some of the underlying cortex, which makes the visibility of the tear in the anterior capsule rather challenging. Let's move to watching how this case was managed. Here's a case where me, the left-handed surgeon, while making my side port entry at the 2 o'clock position, created an accidental nick in the anterior capsule. So now the question is, where do we go from here? Typically, I would perform my rhexis from my main incision at the 1 o'clock position. Now this seems rather awkward. So my choices now are, do I go from the same main incision, which to me would not be very comfortable? Should I go from the left side port, which would be far too close to the tear? I always prefer to overcome such a challenge by starting at a point as far away from that point of the tear as I can, to give me that little leverage to be able to now hold, negotiate and turn the tear around. So here's the plan. I'm going to introduce my instruments from the right side port incision using my non-dominant right hand at 10 o'clock, which is fairly far away from the site of the tear. Let's now see how this case was managed. It's extremely important to visualize under high magnification the exact dimensions, the location and the extent of the tear. It's also important to rule out the presence of any other associated damage, be it to the sphincter or to the zonules or the corneal endothelium, which may coexist. After introducing viscoelastic into the anterior chamber, I now go with the capsulotome through the right side port up to the tear and attempt to now raise a flap. Raising a flap at this point is going to now enable me to hold on to the tear with the help of an intraocular forceps. Whilst stabilizing the globe, the intraocular forceps is now introduced again from the right side and holds on to the flap raised by the capsulotome, and now an attempt is made to start the capsulorrhexis. As you can see, I have initiated the capsulorrhexis at this stage. I now attempt to introduce the cystotome through the left side port because now I have a flap that is raised and folded over, and I believe that with the cystotome now introduced through the left side port, I am going to be able to hold on to that folded part of the tear and propagate the capsulorrhexis further. Another option would be the introduction of an intraocular forceps from the right side to hold on to the raised flap and to propagate the tear. You will now see how I use the cystotome to propagate the capsulorrhexis further. You will notice how I am unable to actually enlarge the rhexis to the size that I desire. Perhaps at the outset, should I have chosen to enlarge the tear towards the center and then raise the flap, perhaps then I would not face this resistance. I now proceed to complete the rhexis. And as you can see, the resultant rhexis is a lot smaller than it needs to be, as well as is extremely eccentric. The eccentricity of the rhexis cannot be questioned because the initial tear in the anterior capsule was fairly peripheral and it had to be incorporated into the capsulorrhexis in order to achieve a stable capsular bag. Now, this undersized and eccentric rhexis is going to make phacoemulsification fairly challenging, with a difficulty in negotiating the fragments in and out of the bag and a high potential of damaging the rhexis edge inferiorly. Therefore, it is imperative that we enlarge the rhexis, and here's how it's done. A nick is made in the capsulorrhexis in the area where it needs to be enlarged. The tear thus created is now held with the help of an intraocular forceps, and as you can see, the rhexis is now enlarged. The resultant capsulorrhexis is now not only stable, but it is adequately sized to allow for a very comfortable subsequent phacoemulsification. With that, we come to the end of this tutorial. Thank you.